Hello, everybody. We are in Internet Exchange Points session. We do some changes. I want to ask Christoph Dietzel to talk about traffic dependencies between IXPs in failure scenarios. After that, we will go to Timothy Denton from Hurricane Electric. And the last presentation will be Nishal Goberton from PCH to talk about road servers in IXPs. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello. Thanks for introducing me. Thank you for having my second presentation here today. My name is Chris, for those who didn't attend the last talk. I was just wondering, given the small number of attendees this time, I would suggest to keep it more open, my talk, so feel free to interrupt me anytime. So I guess we don't need to do the Q&A part at the end of the talk, but rather interrupt me and we might have some discussions, or I can give you some more details during the talk already. So this talk is about investigation of traffic dependencies between IXPs and failure scenarios, and it's a joint work with TU Berlin and other R&D DE-CIX members such as Sasha and Thomas. So if we look from a very large, or from a higher layer of abstraction on the peering ecosystem within Central Europe, we see that there are plenty of IXPs all over the place. We use them, we like peering, we know that peering is a quality service that we experience, but we never really thought about how robust is this IXP interconnection system, because it has grown over the past years steadily, and at some point some of the IXPs just got really big. So the questions we are asking is, what happens if a large IXP fails? What are the implications? Does it affect other IXPs, and how does it potentially affect other IXPs? Also, are other regions affected? Is it really focused or concentrated on the region where the IXP fails, or is there a huge impact on other regional areas as well? Unfortunately, there has been a large European IXP outage, and we did the effort to analyze it, to look at it from different perspectives, and this talk is about the results we got out of it so far. At the end of my talk, I'm going to conclude and discuss a bit the lessons we've learned. So this is the incident I'm talking about. It's a very huge European IXP, and there was a traffic drop, or actually decrease according to their traffic graph. This is a traffic graph of this IXP. Let's call the IXP IXPA. And it happened at 13th of May 2015 at 12:22 p.m. Central European time. There are going to be some other plots later on. Don't be confused by the time. For a multitude of reasons, sometimes we have CET, sometimes we have UTC, but this is actually all the time the same time window. So what happened was there was a loop with 4 100 GE within the core of the IXP, and a lot of traffic got black holed, and about 500 of 600 BGP sessions went down at this IXP. So this is the data plane view. Like, it seems that it went down to 0 for a certain time, and here I got the control plane view. So this plot indicates with a dashed line the incident, and right after that we see 1.4 million prefix updates. The dark green line and the black dotted line is the more than 1 million prefix withdrawals. But just as a peak event, and after that it converges back to a very low activity. So knowing that this incident happened, we ran into the question, like, whether has it an impact on other IXPs? So how would a traffic graph at this point in time look at DE-CIX, for instance? So any opinions, what you would, as a gut feeling, guess what happens? Would you expect to see nothing, like a steady increase at normal days, or would you rather expect a growth, like a spike, or what else? Yeah, what actually happened and what we found surprising, and why we thought it's worthwhile to spend some effort on analyzing it, is that actually the traffic decrease at DE-CIX in Frankfurt decreased. And it decreased by about 240 gigabits per second, which is at that point, at that time of the day, about 10% of the total traffic. So this is a zoomed in traffic graph of DE-CIX. You see it doesn't start at 0, so it didn't go down all the way. However, after it recovered after about 10 minutes. So the question is here, what's the recovering? How is it recovering? Is it recovering because the other IXPs recovering, or is it recovering because of BGP conversion time, or what's going on there? Here we plotted you, or built some sort of timeline for you to get an understanding what went on. And as you can see, the incident happened at 12:22, and for the first, let's say, 2 minutes or a minute, almost nothing has happened, or just a minor decrease. And after a couple of minutes, we see a very, very fast decrease to about 240 gigabits, as I said before. And then we see that the knock of the IXP with a failure reacted very, very fast, so they were able to be back fully operational just after about 10 minutes, which is a very good job though. And we see that at 12:40, that's the last dashed line, the BGP session to the route server are back online at the other IXP. So the question we got here now is, with this picture, what could the reason for this behavior? What happened? What are the dependencies? Because the dependency is counterintuitive. From our perspective, we also would have, if someone would just ask me the question, I would have said, yeah, probably it will go up after a couple of minutes, so we experience a spike. And we found 3 answers why this is indeed not the case, but rather the opposite. First of all, we have customers that use remote peering, and they do remote peering with 1 router at 2 IXPs. So for instance, at the IXP A that experienced the failure, and also with the other connection, it's peering at DE-CIX. And if there's an overload of traffic that brings down the router, then obviously all BGP sessions drop, and the AS is not connected to any of the 2 IXPs anymore. So this means if a router gets overloaded from a failing IXP that really is broadcasting a lot of traffic, then we can also see that the traffic of this AS goes away from the other IXP. But this case was just a minor case. We did the math and we came up with about 1 gigabit per second can be accounted to that. So we had to dig deeper and continue with our analysis, and we came up with an asymmetric routing path. So the question is, we all know that the internet has asymmetric traffic path, and is there a significant number of asymmetric traffic paths traversing 2 IXPs, in this case both IXPs, the failing IXP and DE-CIX. So the scenario is as follows. An end user, for instance, is requesting some content via his access AS over the first IXP. Then the content delivery network, for instance, delivers the traffic over another IXP. And in this case, if either connection terminates and the BGP conversion time is too long, we will see TCP sessions going down, and therefore both IXPs will decrease in traffic in this case. So if IXP B fails, IXP A will lose traffic. So therefore we did a small RIPE Atlas measurement study. We took all the ASs that are connected to Frankfurt and the other IXP. We found 323. Then we looked into our data and analyzed or filtered out all IXPs, all ASs that lost more than 200 megabits per second at that incident, and we found 183. And then we looked at the ASs hosting at least one RIPE Atlas probe. RIPE Atlas probe is an active measurement system with which you can do trace routes. So, and the intersection of those three are just 50 ASs. So this is why I'm saying we did a small measurement study, since we were not able to test for each AS we would have liked to test because they didn't have a probing system. And the measurement results of a full mesh trace route within those 50 ASs is that 38% of all connections are asymmetric, and 8% of all the connections traversed no IXP. So meaning that about 40% the way from AS A to AS B traversed one IXP, and on the way back the other one. So exactly the pattern which was responsible for the traffic loss at DE-CIX during the IXP failure. So a small asymmetric routing path validation. So we also compared it not only with IXPA in a larger measurement, we also did it with an IXPC, which is another large European IXP, and we compared those different IXPs also. And we see that there's clearly a small number, or there's clearly a number around 10% of the paths asymmetric, and this number is even higher if you consider that there are also non-IXP paths. The takeaway here is that also we see that it might just be 10% of the path that is asymmetric. We always face the issue that we don't know what kind of path it is, because we count one path as one path, obviously, but we don't know how much traffic such a path is carrying. If we consider that this is the path from a huge CDN delivering to a huge eyeball network, this is just one path, but it could be accountable for gigabits of traffic. And to come closer to this question, or to the answer to this question, we plotted here some impact details. On the left side, you can see the source IS with traffic losses more than 5%, and you can see the number of megabits that those ASs lost, and the classification according to peering DB, how they see their network. And you see that the source ASs were mainly content, or the huge losers were content providers, so CDNs. So that's exactly what we had on the last slide. It's just a path, but it's a traffic-heavy path that fails. And that's why we see really significant amounts of traffic getting lost, or rerouted, or whatsoever, not present at DE-CIX anymore. And the destination is obviously the opposite. You see eyeball providers and ISPs, not a lot of content providers. So another cause of it, let me say it's a cause, but actually we're not really able to infer the importance of this cause, because users may stop using the internet for a couple of minutes as soon as they experience that they cannot use their websites anymore, or cannot really send the mails they want to send. So For sure, there is some user behavior involved in this entire situation, but we can't really say how many users affected, and we cannot really account the bandwidth or the traffic loss for this case. So it's very hard to quantify. Okay, to proceed a bit, we looked at the risk collector of that particular AS that, or IXP that failed. And what some networks do, they tag their prefixes they announce or they receive, tag it with the community to know at which geographical location they received the prefix. And if we use this information, those communities, then we are able to infer which announcements were responsible for traffic that moved away from the incident place and back again. So this plot shows us with a purple line paths that switched back from the IXP that failed, and green means that they came back. So first we see up to 15,000 prefixes switching back from the failing IXP, and the green line shows us that a bit more than 10,000, let's say 11,000, switched back after that. And then we see the usual pattern over time. So what we see is that something else went on there, and that the BGP worked, and that a lot of paths switched back or swinged away from that failing IXP. Also, to really infer from a user perspective what went on, we built some sort of methodology. We first used we used the RIPE and atlas data, so all trace routes from that day, and we checked which paths or which trace routes reliably went over the failing or later failing IXP, and this was our base set, and this set we looked at for this plot at the day of the incident. And first we see green, which means the trace route continued to see the IXP reliably on every trace route that was sent in a full mesh manner between all the RIPE atlas probes. And then you see the vertical red line, that's when the incident happened, and what we see clearly here is that the infrastructure that it failed, so the trace route failed and the infrastructure was not seen. This is red, and orange is it also failed, so the trace route failed, but first we could see some sort of edge of the infrastructure, so we got an IP from the peering LAN back. But still it failed, so red and orange is failing, and blue is the trace route went through, but it changed the path, so it did not go over the IXP infrastructure anymore. And green is all okay. So what we also see, this was not a 100% outage. We can say that 15 to 20% of the trace routes still made their way through the IXP that failed. And another interesting aspect of this plot is that we see that over time, or like after the time of the failure, everything is okay again, and every trace route succeeds. But we see that about 20% does not come fast back to the failing IXP. They are just somewhere else. So, and if I don't have it here, but if you look at this plot for 10 more hours, it seems that 15%, 10 to 15% remain gone from this IXP. They don't switch back to this one. This could be because of the BGP session uptime as a tiebreaker. This could be because of operational changes, since some NOCs adapted their routing. and there's a multitude of reasons. One side note, this is trace routes between RIPE atlas probes. It's not necessarily mappable to the traffic volumes at this IXP. It could also be that the heavy traffic carrying links still continue to go over the IXP, which in conclusion means that it does not mean that they have less traffic after this incident because of that, but it could be. So let me conclude and summarize what I was talking about so far. The reasons for traffic volume dependencies between different IXPs are remote peering routers that are overloaded. So be aware of, if you peer with one router at multiple IXPs, that this may put your network in danger in such failure scenarios, and that is a sort of risky setup. Probably the root cause for this traffic loss at the not failing IXP, the DE-CIX, was the asymmetric routing path. It's not that we really need to change something here or that we're suggesting to change it, but we encourage you to keep it in consideration, to keep it in your mind when you do your network planning, that there are asymmetric, or that asymmetric routing is nothing new, it's nothing special, and just consider it. It's there and it might cause failures or situations you're not aware of and you're not familiar with. And we have the less users that use the internet in the regions. We had the hugest impact of the outage. The good news in general is the internet infrastructure is not affected largely if a large IXP fails. So that's also an important statement, because before, regulatory instances were not too sure about and were really sort of afraid of such an event, and we had one now and we can say there is an impact, but this impact is limited to mostly limited to a certain region, and if possible, BGP will reroute and will switch the path to other, through other networks, whatsoever that is then. Some more takeaways is it's good that we have the knowledge of traffic dependencies of IXPs now, so consider it when you do your network planning, and it's useful for designing peer and especially remote peering. And we need to improve the recovery time, maybe by applying stuff that is a route server, BFDs, or we need to strengthen the communication between IXPs to even become better. So if there are any further questions, concerns, comments, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, please. Thank you, Christoph. Yes, please, Nisha.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Nishal. I work for a few internet exchange points in South Africa, so this is really interesting. Thank you. I learned quite a bit as well. I have a question that's not related to your presentation, but perhaps it's something that you've done anyway. So this is obviously the failure of a large exchange point and how it affected another large exchange point.
Yeah.
Have you done any other modeling? So let's just take a step back. The particular area of Europe routes a lot of the internet traffic, right? I mean, just looking at the numbers that's going across the public switch fabric and some of the large internet exchange points, they're in the terabits a second, tens of terabits a second, if you sum all of that up. So have you and the research team at DE-CIX done any modeling to say what would happen if there were cascading failures or any kind of research work there? Again, it's not related to this.
It's somehow related. Like, indeed, I'm personally working on some stuff to try to do some modeling. The issue is we have limited ground truth. So there not that many incidents, and so this is hard to build a model without a lot of training data. What we did is we checked back on some smaller IXPs that failed in the past, and what we see there's also an impact, but it's by far not as huge as this one. So we see those patterns, but I guess this was really one of the first times that big IXP failed, so it's hard to really model on it, but actually we continue to do some work in this area, indeed, yeah. So
Any other question?
Or comments, or someone is disagreeing, or...
Okay, thank you, Christoph,
Okay,
for your presentation.
thanks.
So we are going to listen to HE's observations on IXP management by Team